Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and today I wanted to talk to you about L&M Fine Jewelry. The L stands for Landy, the M stands for Michael, and the An stands for their son, Carson, or as he jokingly says, it stands for Carson. It's a family-owned jewelry company. It's your diamond destination. I know it's my destination. I went there to get my fiance's engagement ring. They took great care of me. Their customer service is amazing. They're very attentive to what you need and what you're looking for, and they know exactly how to get you that. And also, their communication is top notch. They take great pride in taking good care of their customers. They took great care of me and my fiance every time we went in there. Great smiles on all their faces. They do a great job. If you're in the Missoula area, or even if you're in the state of Montana, you have to drive over to Missoula, come to L&M Fine Jewelry, get that ring for that special person. It's your diamond destination. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Kim here, and I'm back with another one. Today, I got a great Tuesday video for you guys. This week is 4th of July week, holiday week. A lot of people are probably taking a lot of time off, if not the whole week off, at least probably the back half of the week. Hope you guys enjoy your holiday weekend this week, the 4th of July on Thursday, Friday, whatever it is on Friday that you're doing. But I hope you guys enjoy a lot of family time celebrating the United States, our independence. Hope you guys enjoy it. Today, I wanted to talk about FCS Fans Nation dropped a graphic talking about the Big Four in the Big Sky Conference, who was the best out of the Big Four being Montana, Montana State, Idaho, and Eastern Washington. We'll tackle that. FCS Football Central's predicted order of finish for the Big Sky Conference. We'll talk about that. Some interesting rankings there. Kind of lines up a little bit with what I said my preseason rankings would be, but we'll talk about that a little bit. Predicting who has the biggest chance to shock their conference in 2024, or will the champ repeat in FCS football? We'll talk about that. Changes in the FCS in 2024 and beyond. So we're talking FCS conference realignment, teams going into different conferences, teams moving up to the FBS, teams, all types of stuff like that. We'll be talking about that. The most anticipated FCS games of 2024. So in one of the FCS football chats this week, somebody asked, what games are you most anticipating for the 2024 season? I looked at some of the ones that people have mentioned the most. I made a list of them, and we will be talking about those. And then the week 0 games, some of the notable FCS versus FBS games in week 0, the first week of the football season. That's going to be exciting. So make sure you guys hit the like, make sure you guys subscribe, make sure you guys leave me a comment down below, and we will get straight into the video. Okay, first things first. I will have this graphic up as I'm talking about this, but we are talking about the FCS Fans Nation's graphic. As you guys can see, it says all-time record versus Big Four Big Sky teams. With Montana, it's 136-16 with 8 ties. With 19 Big Sky championships. With Montana State, it's 74-133 with 6 ties and 17 Big Sky championships. You got Eastern Washington at 58-62-1 with 10 Big Sky championships. And then you have the Idaho Vandals with 101-58 and 3 ties and 9 Big Sky championships. So, I think Idaho, Idaho and Montana being the only 2 teams in the conference, the only 2 teams out of the Big Four with winning records. Obviously, Montana has been the most successful school. They have a positive winning record out of two of the 3 other schools. Montana State doesn't have a winning record against anybody. Eastern Washington has a winning record against Montana State, and then you have Idaho, who has a winning record against all 3. So pretty good for Idaho. Idaho has been, I think historically, Idaho has been a pretty strong team in the Big Sky Conference as of late. They've just started to get back to it. I think the first couple of years that they were back, 2018, 19, 2021, I think they were kind of trying to get their feet underneath them, but I think they've kind of, gotten back to some of their winning ways. Obviously, they haven't won a Big Sky championship as of yet since they've been back to the FCS level. But, winning record against everybody, even a winning record against Montana, even though they're, I believe, 8-2 in the last 10 times they've played Montana. They were able to win in 2022, but they haven't really won, whether at a home or away. They actually won in Montana last year in 2022, but I think this is pretty interesting. Montana having 19 Big Sky championships, Montana State having 17. I think that's pretty crazy because I don't think I've seen Montana State win a ton of Big Sky championships since I've been covering, not only covering, but also just been a part of the Big Sky Conference. When I played there, they never won the Big Sky Conference. And then, They won it in 2022 after I left. But then even before then, I don't know how super successful they were, but to have 17 Big Sky championships clearly says something. Eastern Washington to have 10. They actually have a national championship as well. I think one thing that could have added to this graphic is if they put teams that have won a national championship during their time in the Big Sky Conference. I know Montana has 2. I don't know if Idaho, Eastern, I think the Eastern has 1 actually because they won in 2010. That might be their only national championship in their school's history, football-wise. I don't know if Montana State, I don't think Montana State has won 1, and I don't know if Idaho has won 1. But I'm very surprised to see that Idaho has a positive record against everybody. Obviously, they haven't played the amount of games against all these opponents that Montana has. But for them to have a positive record against everybody clearly says something about the history of Idaho and how they have been in the Big Sky Conference. Something that stands out to me is the fact that Eastern Washington doesn't have a positive record overall. And then to see that they only have a winning record against Idaho, against Montana State. Clearly, Idaho has been dominating them. They're 8-19 against them. The Grizz 18-30-1 against the Grizz. So not very successful against the Grizz, but 32-13 against Montana State. I think that's something that kind of sparks. I didn't even know this for a lot of my time in the Big Sky playing for Montana, that Montana State and Eastern Washington were kind of like a rivalry. Obviously, we all know Montana and Montana State are a rivalry, and a lot of people like to call the Grizz and Eastern Washington a rivalry. And at times, it can feel like a rivalry, especially in 2021 when we played them twice, the first time on national television, and then we played them in the quarterfinals, or not even the quarterfinals. I think that was just the second round of the playoffs, but played them in the second round of the playoffs in 2021 that same year. That is kind of when it was giving that rivalry feel, especially all the comments being made back and forth between the two teams with the lead up of that game in the playoffs. Not even between the two teams, because I don't think any of us at Montana said much of anything, but to have, their top receiver, probably the top receiver, one of the top receivers in the country, the top receiver in the conference that year, statistically say what he said, that definitely charged up some of us as players, and we had to do something about it. But, Idaho is one that stands out to me. Eastern Washington is one that stands out to me, obviously, but, those Grizz, baby. Win, baby, win. Got to switch that record around. I wonder how long it would take until that record is at least even against Montana and Idaho, because that's a 25-game difference with the wins and losses. Idaho, obviously, there must have been a time in there where Idaho was winning and Montana couldn't even sniff a win. I'd love to see some of the history of that. Maybe I can do that in another video, look at the history of Montana versus Idaho and see how the record became what it was. Look up some of those scores, look up some of the streaks that they went on, because I'm sure they had to go on at least a 5 to 10 game win streak to get up 20. I mean, just look at the Montana Bozeman record, 75-42, 33-game lead for Montana over Montana State. I mean, that's what happens when you win like 10 plus straight, 10 to 20 straight. That's what happens. So, nothing too crazy on this topic. I didn't have much to talk about on this topic. I think FCS Fans Nation did a great job with this, but I also wanted to bring up, let me talk about a little bit of what they said underneath. So they put nerd warning with the little, like the hockey, the hockey siren alert thing. And they said team seasons in Big Sky Conference, average years per conference title. So team Montana, seasons in the Big Sky Conference, 60, and their average year per conference title is 3.16 years. Montana State, 60 seasons, average year per conference title, 3.53. So about 3.5 years for Montana State every time they win a conference title, about 3 years every time Montana wins a title. Eastern Washington, 36 seasons, 3.6, so close to that 3.5 number as well, similar to Montana State, but, 24 less seasons for Eastern Washington, so that's going to skew their average a little bit as well. And then 41 seasons for Idaho, so 4.56 years, about 4.5 years every time they win a conference title. Obviously, Idaho has 41 seasons in the conference, so 5 more than Eastern Washington, but still about 20 less than Montana and Montana State. But, seem to be winning a conference title every, so often. Obviously, we haven't seen them win one in the last 4 to 5, 6 since they've been back. They haven't won one, but I'm sure, Coach Eck getting those boys together, getting those recruits in there, getting the system that he wants in, they will be there very soon. You guys let me know what you guys think about this. I thought it was very interesting. I saw it on Twitter and I thought, man, like that's pretty crazy for them to, break down the records, get the conference titles in there, and then put the records against each team in there. I think it's pretty cool. You guys let me know what you guys think about this. What stands out to you most about this graphic? And we will move on. Okay. This is from Zach McKinnell, FCS Blue Bloods on Facebook, or not on Facebook, FCS Blue Bloods on YouTube if you guys want to go subscribe to his channel. But FCS Football Central is his Sports Illustrated domain online that you guys can find all of the articles, all of the writing that he does. He does a great job covering FCS football. He covers a lot of HBCU football. They don't get, I think they get a lot of good coverage. I follow a lot of people who cover HBCU football very well, but Zach McKinnell does a really good job covering the FCS and giving a shine on HBCU football as well. So make sure you guys go tap in with him. He did FCS Football Central's predicted order of finish for the Big Sky Conference. At 1, he had Montana State. Now, obviously, I think he's probably taking into account that Montana State had one of the best offenses in the country last year. He's probably predicting that they'll have a better defense this year, but he's got Montana State at 1. Obviously, you got Tommy Malott. Obviously, you got, I think Cleveland Thomas was one of the receivers that's returning. He's got Dowler, who's returning as well. I don't know if those were like standout guys. They don't throw the ball a ton, but those are guys who made plays for them last year and guys who, contributed to some of their success that they saw in 2023. They also got a ton of running backs coming back. Scottre Humphrey and Julian Davis. I think it's Julian Davis returning in 2024. So they got pieces offensively. Their offensive line, they got the best offensive line in Division I football in Marcus Weir, one of the top offensive linemen in Division I football in Marcus Weir. He's a stalwart on the offensive line. A bunch of offensive linemen who have started. And then defensively, you got a few starters returning, some defensive guys returning, but Brody Greeby's the standout guy that you need to watch for them returning. But he's got them at number 1. He's got Montana at number 2. Obviously, we all know, I've talked about it ad nauseum, what Montana is returning offensively, defensively. Riley Wilson, Jackson Lee, one of their returners, Trevin Gradney, legacy number now. You got their linebacker. I'm not sure how much Ryan Terrell. I don't know if Ryan Terrell will start or if he'll be a reserve type guy. I would guess he's going to start. He's been there for so many years now. I believe he's going to be a senior this year as well, so it's his time. That's usually how it works with the linebackers. But they have some good pieces returning from Montana as well. Defensively, they should be solid. Offensively, hoping they'll be really good, but the quarterback position and offensive line is going to be the question for them. Sac State at number 3, Caden Bennett returning. They also have that freshman quarterback returning as well. They got some defensive pieces. I think defense is going to be the question for Sac State, but offensively, I think they should be pretty solid. Sacramento State at 3. Tied at number 4, he has UC Davis and Idaho. I would honestly switch UC Davis and Sac State. I would put UC Davis at number 3. I would have had Montana at number 1, but I would have put UC Davis at number 3. I would have put Sac at number 4, and I would have probably put Idaho at number 5, and I wouldn't have tied Idaho and UC Davis. But I get why he does. UC Davis is returning their quarterback. They're returning their running back, Land Larison, Offensive Player of the Year. Land Larison, really, really good player. Dog. I think for UC Davis, defense is going to be the question. Idaho, I think offensively, there's some question marks for them. He has them tied at number 4. I think offensively, there's some questions for them. How does that quarterback play in an extended, when you have a bigger sample size of games for him? How does he look? Obviously, he played well against Idaho State last year, but what does he look like when he's the guy year in and game out, and people are able to game plan against him? How do they replace the running back? How do they replace Hayden Hatton? How do they replace his production? And then how do they replace some of the pieces that they lost on defense in their defensive back? On the defensive back side of things, I think they lost one defensive back. I don't think they lost too much defensively for Idaho, but offensively is the big question mark for them. Running back, receiver, quarterback. How do they replace that trio? You got Weber State at 6. I honestly think, I wouldn't say Weber State's too high, but I don't think Weber State is going to be very good. They lost their starting linebacker, 2 of their starting linebackers, 1 to BYU, and then they lost 1 to the draft, and then they lost one of their starting corners or safeties. He was a returner, but corner or safety as well. So I think defensively is going to be a question mark for me for Weber State. I don't see any problem with having them at 6. You got Eastern Washington at 7. Obviously, they got Kekoa Visperis, and then you have Efton Chisholm, the duo that is supposed to tear it up this year. I hope they're going to tear it up this year. You got Nolan Ulm at receiver as well. I think defense again. A lot of these teams with the Big Sky, it comes down to defense. How does their defense play? I think a lot of these teams don't struggle too much offensively. Obviously, there's woes in there with some of these teams offensively not being able to get their footing together. But I think most of these teams are able to put up points when they're clicking on all cylinders. What do they look like defensively? Eastern Washington is another team that doesn't always tackle the best. What do they look like defensively? How are they going to be able to stop teams when they put up points? Idaho is tied at 8. Idaho State is tied at 8 with Portland State. I probably would have switched Idaho State and Portland State. I would have had Portland State just straight up at number 7 or number 8, and then I would have had Idaho State at 9. But Idaho State, Portland State, Idaho State, I think is going to still be pretty solid offensively. It comes down to them defensively, just like Eastern. Portland State, once again, not a great, like these three, Eastern Washington, Idaho State, and Portland State, none of them tackle very well. So it'll come down to tackling. It'll come down to defense for most of those teams. Portland State, I think they'll still be solid on the ground. I think their special teams will be improved. You got Robbie Hauk running their special teams this year, so I know he knows some things. I don't even think Robbie played a ton of special teams, but Robbie was a standout in the Big Sky. Obviously, he's going to be able to learn from his dad. Hopefully, his dad's going to be teaching him some of the things he knows. Hopefully, he can run some of the things that his dad runs, and I think those special teams will be pretty solid. But they got Dante Sachere at quarterback returning. Defense. Who are the standouts on defense for Portland State? That is the question mark. Northern Arizona, they got some defensive All-America, freshman All-American, Alex McLaughlin returning on the defensive side. But, like, what does their D-line look like? Offensively, what do they look like offensively? They lost a receiver, Owen. I think he was all-conference. He might have been honorable mention, but I think he was an all-conference receiver one of these years. He's transferred out. What do they look like? Cal Poly, Elijah Ponder is the only player I really know from that team. They lost their quarterback, Heward. Cal Poly's been trying to figure it out since they went away from the triple option. So I think, 11 and 12, I don't really have a problem with the bottom of it. I do think Northern Arizona could potentially shock some people and finish higher than 10, but I don't have any problem. They have been my dark horse throughout the offseason, Northern Arizona, but I don't have any problem with them being at 10, That is what it is. But what do you guys think about this? What do you guys think? Do you guys think Montana State should be 1, where they would finish for the Big Sky? Do you see Montana State winning the Big Sky? Or who do you see winning the Big Sky? You let me know in the comments. I really see Montana winning it this year, just based on what they're returning and based on what the outlook of the Big Sky looks like. I think talent-wise, just right now, it seems like a more of a down year talent-wise in the Big Sky. I guess time will tell, but I think if we're talking about just talent and on paper, Montana looks like they should be the team to beat in the Big Sky, but you got to play the games. So that's why we play the sport, because they are keeping score, because they're not just going to give it to anybody. So if Montana thinks they should win it, go out and prove me right. If not, we will see. But you guys let me know what you think about that, and I will move on. Okay. Predicting who has the biggest chance to shock their conference in 2024, or will the champ repeat? Now, I think the wording is a little off for this, because I don't think some of these will be shockers if they were to win their conference. But I'm trying to look at every conference, except for the ASUN and the WAC. I'm not looking at those because I'm pretty sure the WAC is the United Athletic Conference. The article I was looking at was an NCAA article with Stan Becton, and I didn't put the ASUN on there, and I didn't put the WAC on there either. But I'm predicting who I think will either shock their conference and win in 2024, or who will repeat as conference champion. For the Big Sky, I think UC Davis has a chance to shock the conference. I think their schedule looks pretty favorable for them as a Big Sky schedule, but also I think if Land Larson can stay healthy, I think if their quarterback can stay healthy, they have a chance to do some things. They were a team that was playing pretty well in 2023, but Land Larson ended up getting hurt, and then they didn't make the playoffs. I don't know why they didn't make the playoffs, but they didn't end up making the playoffs. They had the same record as Sac State. Sac State ends up winning a game and then going to South Dakota and losing. But I think either or could have made it. But UC Davis is the team that I could see shocking the conference in the Big Sky in 2024. They're the team that I think could shake some things up. We will see how they do. In the MVFC, I'm going to say South Dakota. South Dakota had a really good defense last year. I think they lost some pieces on that defense, either to seniority or to the draft. I think one of their corners ended up getting drafted. But they had a really, really good defense in 2023. That's going to be the key as to why, if they're good or not. But they were 7-1 in the Missouri Valley last year. That one loss being to South Dakota State, who ended up winning the conference. So I think South Dakota could potentially shake some things up and shock the MVFC. Obviously, South Dakota State and North Dakota State are the easy picks for the MVFC. But if I'm saying somebody could shock the conference, I would say South Dakota. And right behind them, I'd probably put it on North Dakota to be another team that could potentially shock it. But obviously, we know North Dakota State, South Dakota State run that conference. So time will only tell, but I think South Dakota has a chance in the MVFC. I think they have Carter Bell, their receiver. They're returning their quarterback as well, I believe. But, what else? What do other things look like? What do the pieces offensively look like? What do some of their defensive stars look like? That will be something that we'll have to monitor and see. But I think South Dakota could shake some things up. For the Patriot League, I see Lafayette returning. They got one of the top linemen in the FCS. They have, I think, who's the top returning running back in Jamar Curtis in the FCS. He's an absolute dog, 1,500 rushing yards. I'm not going to go down it because I could talk about him for a long time. I think Lafayette repeats. I think Dormady, the quarterback, I think it's Dormady. No, it's not Dormady. What's his name? I'm blanking on their quarterback's name. If you know it, please leave it in the comments. But I think Lafayette should repeat. Looking at the Patriot League, Holy Cross is losing their top receiver in Jalen Coker. How do they replace him? They're losing their quarterback in Saluka. How do they replace him? And Holy Cross didn't even win last year, so they were having a down year. Thinking about the rest of that landscape, I think the Patriot League is adding Richmond. I don't know if that's happening this year or next year, but what does that conference look like? I don't think it looks very strong. I think Lafayette is returning most of their pieces. I feel strongly about saying that they should win the conference in 2024. Now, obviously, the games are going to be played. They keep score. I can think what I want. It doesn't always have to turn out that way, and it doesn't always turn out that way. So we will see, but I'm going to say Lafayette will win the Patriot League in 2024. With the Pioneer League, which was won by Drake in 2023. Drake ran the table, and then they lost immediately against North Dakota State. Nobody's going to blame them, That is why the playoffs exist, and that is why I think they're trying to realign some of the playoffs so that, we get a little more, what am I trying to say? A little more parity within the playoffs. So it's like you're not playing against, because if we had 16 seeds last year, and I could go on a tangent about this as well, if there were 16 seeds last year, North Dakota State probably would have been a seed in 2023. They for sure would have been a seed, and they probably wouldn't even have played a Drake. They might not have had a bye. The first top 8 probably still would have had a bye. I mean, are they going to give the 16? I don't think they're going to give. I can't remember. I have to go back and look at my notes from that. But I know for sure that North Dakota State would have been a seed, and they probably wouldn't have played Drake, Either way, Drake won the Pioneer League in 2023. They ran the table. They did not lose a conference game in 2023. I am going to pick St. Thomas to win the conference for them. They're a team that I think was 7-1, if I'm not mistaken, in the Pioneer League last year, right there on Drake's heels. They're a team that moved up from D3 a couple of years ago. So, they had a winning culture at D3. I think they were at D3. It might have been D2, but they weren't at the FCS, and they had a winning culture previously to getting to the FCS. And I think that winning culture has carried over into the FCS. So I'm excited to see how they do. I'm really excited to see how they do. And I think they could win the Pioneer League in 2024, and beat out Drake and anybody else in that Pioneer League that seems and looks to compete in 2024. I'm going to say St. Thomas. For the Big South, wow. Okay, so I didn't put the Big South OVC on here, and I'm just going to skip that for right now because I forgot to put a Big South OVC team on here. The United Athletic Conference, I got Central Arkansas. Obviously, the United Athletic Conference is losing Tarleton State in 2024, but Austin Peay was the team that won that conference in 2023. Central Arkansas was right there. There were a couple other teams that were 4-2. There was a bunch of teams in that conference that were 4-2, but Central Arkansas, I like Central Arkansas in 2024 to win the United Athletic Conference. I don't think United Athletic Conference is one of the stronger conferences in the FCS, but Central Arkansas, a team that I believe has been in the Southland before, now in the United Athletic Conference, I could see them winning the UAC in 2024. You guys let me know what you guys think about that, because I don't know. I'm kind of iffy about that Central Arkansas pick. I think there's a lot of teams in that United Athletic Conference that could win. I think there's going to be a game or two in there that really decides it for that conference. But I feel strong. I feel good about saying Central Arkansas, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was wrong about that. So you guys let me know in the comments what you think about that. Princeton for the Ivy League. Now Princeton, they finished like 5th or 6th, maybe 4th or 5th in the Ivy League in 2024, but their defense was really, really strong. They had probably one of the best defenses in the country last year, one of the top defenses in the Ivy League. They just weren't able to put it together. Their offense, they had really good defense. They were keeping teams to low scoring totals, but then they weren't putting up a lot of points. So it's like you're holding teams to low points, but then your offense sucks. So, Princeton's a team that I think if they get it figured out on the offensive end of things, if their defense is still the same and they figure it out on the offensive end, I think they're a team that could be really good in the Ivy League. Obviously, Yale won that conference in 2023. They only play 10 regular season games. They don't play postseason. Unfortunately, I would love to see some Ivy League teams in the postseason, see how they do, because I think they're one of the better defensive conferences in the FCS. Obviously, the 10 regular season games probably helps their average, but I think they play good defense in the Ivy League. Princeton, defensively, that's the only reason I'm picking that pick. They were really good defensively last year. Let's see if they can carry that over and add some offense to it. Princeton for the Ivy League. For the MEAC, North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central, I think, finished 9-3 last year, but they're a team that actually played in the FCS playoffs last year because they didn't make the Celebration Bowl because they got beat out by, I think it was Howard, who actually ended up having a worse record than them, but still, I think, won the conference, so they ended up they won that MEAC, so they ended up going to the Celebration Bowl. They ended up, playing for the Celebration Bowl. Either way, North Carolina Central, they lost to Richmond, who I think they honestly could have beat. They had a really good lead against Richmond in the first half. Richmond snapped out of it and ended up coming back in the second half and beating them. But North Carolina Central University is a team that I could see winning the MEAC in 2024. I can see North Carolina Central winning. I don't know much about the MEAC or the SWAC. I'm going to be very honest with you. Don't know much about a lot of the players in that conference. I don't know much about a lot of the teams in that conference. But North Carolina Central is my pick to win the MEAC in 2024. The SWAC, FAMU is going to repeat. Now, FAMU probably had a top 5 defense in FCS last year. I think they held teams to like 15 points a game. Really good output for them. I think they've returned a lot of pieces. I've been talking to a lot of friends that cover the SWAC that follow FAMU football. I know they're going through a quarterback battle right now. Some fans think one quarterback should start. Some fans think another quarterback should start. Maybe it's a consensus with what the fans think and what the coaches think, but I know there's some quarterback controversy going on with them. But I think, they return a lot of pieces. They do really good on the recruiting trail. They bring in a lot of pieces. So I think with the transfers that they've brought in, with some of the pieces that they return, with some of the hangover from last year, hopefully carrying over to this year, with the way that defense played last year, hopefully they got the same fire this year. I think FAMU should be able to repeat as conference champions in the SWAC conference. You guys let me know what you think about that. Next, we have the Northeast Conference, the NEC Conference. I say Duquesne is going to repeat as champion in that conference. When you look at the NEC Conference, I'm not trying to hate on the NEC. I'm not trying to hate on any of the teams in the NEC, but I've never heard of some of the teams in the Northeast Conference. Duquesne, I've heard of. Sacred Heart, who's no longer in the NEC, I've heard of. I don't have the conference pulled up right in front of me, but if I pulled it up, Stonehill is one of the teams I saw. Merrimack, I think, is one of the teams I saw. Merrimack might be the newest team in the NEC. But, I can't even think. I think Wagner is one of the teams in the NEC. I think they're decent at football, at basketball. But football, they got a bunch of schools that I think, if there was any conference that could get annexed from the FCS, it would be the NEC. If any conference could ever justify being annexed from the FCS, it'd be the NEC. They only get one team into the playoffs, Duquesne. They usually never win. I don't think they do too hot in the playoffs ever. Like, they don't compete with any teams outside of their conference. I don't know. I don't know. I honestly want to watch more NEC football games this year to see what the football looks like, see what the competition level is, see what the athletes are like on the team. I know every conference is going to have athletes, obviously, but I'm just curious. I'm very curious with that conference. But Duquesne, I say they're going to repeat. I think they brought their quarterback back, who was a Walter Payton Award finalist. I don't think he went to the award show, but I think he was like one of the top 10 or 15 finalists or whatever it is when they get to those finalists. Quarterback, pretty good player for them. So Duquesne to repeat in the NEC. For the SoCon, Furman won the SoCon last year, I believe. They made it to the FCS quarterfinals, falling to Montana. But Mercer is the team I see winning that SoCon conference. They made the playoffs last year. They ended up losing to South Dakota State in the second round of the playoffs. They got beat down. They got beat down bad. But Mercer, good outfit. They bring in a lot of transfers in 2024. I think that's something that's going to lead them to winning that conference in 2024. They lost Furman, obviously losing their quarterback to transfer. I think he ended up at Arkansas State. Tyler, can't remember his last name. Tyler, you guys know his last name. You guys know what I'm talking about. Really, really good player. Really good FCS player. Honestly, I think he probably should have stayed at Furman, ran it back. But, to each their own. Furman, won that conference last year. They lost a lot of pieces defensively. Not even defensively. I think they might have lost. Their defense was hella good last year. Furman's defense was hella good. And honestly, they are close for me to probably repeat if their defense can be as good as it was last year. They fly it around. Man, I loved watching that defense play. They played the right way, filling in gaps, being in the right spot at the right time. Effort. They play with a lot of effort. And when you see a team that plays with a lot of effort, if they got the athletes and if they care about it, they should be pretty good defensively. And, that's what Furman had. Either way, Mercer, with all the transfer additions that they brought in, with the losses that Furman took, not that other teams aren't bringing in transfer portal pieces and not that other teams aren't recruiting, but I like what Mercer brought in off of what they were able to do last year. And if they were able to improve on that in 2024, I think they could have a pretty good season. Ended up winning that SoCon conference. Transfer additions is the reason I'm putting on there. Not that other teams don't recruit, not that other teams don't have transfers, but I think Mercer should be able to be pretty strong in 2024. With the Southland, I like Incarnate Word. And now Incarnate Word is a team that's going to get tested early on in the season. They play a couple of Missouri Valley teams. I think they play Southern Illinois, and they also play South Dakota State. So I'm very, very excited for these games. That's a game I'm going to mention later on in this video when some of the fans in the Facebook groups talked about some of the most anticipated FCS games. That Incarnate Word versus South Dakota State game is one of the games that I'm very interested in seeing. But Incarnate Word is the school that I see winning that Southland Conference. Obviously, you had Nichols, who won that last year. They actually finished with a 6-7 record, not 6-7, 5-6 record, but they were 6-0. One of their games got forfeited, but they were 6-0 in conference. So they ended up winning the Southland. It might have been, I think they were 6-0 in the Southland. So they ended up winning that conference. Incarnate Word is a team that I like a lot. I like that school. I like the name, honestly, Incarnate Word. And I remember when Lindsey Scott was there and he tore it up. So he's somebody who I resonate with a lot. Obviously, he's not there. Obviously, he's in the UFL now. But I see Incarnate Word. They're going to get tested early on in the season. I think that should prepare them well to play in that Southland Conference, playing some of those MVFC teams early on in the season. Southern Illinois, really good defensive outfit last year. And then South Dakota State was a really good defensive, one of the best defense we've ever seen in FCS football last year. So Incarnate Word is my pick to win and shock the Southland Conference. I don't think that would be a shock. I think they've kind of been around the top of the Southland Conference since they've been in the conference. So I don't think that would be a particular shock if they won that conference. The CAA, I got Villanova. I like Villanova to win that conference in 2024. They, I think, shared it in 2023. It was Villanova, Richmond, and I'm blanking on the last team. Was it Delaware? Might have been Delaware, who were the three teams who shared that conference title in 2023. But I like Villanova defense. Defense wins. Defense. Villanova had one of the better defenses in 2023. I think they were one of the next to Montana, even though Montana lost by 20 to South Dakota State. Villanova played South Dakota State pretty strong. It was a terrible weather game. It was super windy, super cold, but Villanova played them pretty well until the late third, fourth quarter when South Dakota State started to put their thumb down on them. But, Villanova is the team I see winning that CAA. Big conference. It would not shock me if there's a lot of teams that I could probably pick that could win that conference. 16 teams in that conference. They're adding another team this year. I'm blanking on who that is, but really, really good teams coming from the CAA. So it wouldn't be a stretch if another team didn't win it, but I see Villanova. I guess that's a repeat if they won in 2023. I see them repeating in 2024, maybe, being the sole winner. But with all those teams, with not everybody playing each other, it's almost highly likely that there's multiple people sharing the title in the CAA. So we will see how that turns out. You guys let me know what you guys think about that. Do you guys disagree with any of these picks? Who do you guys see winning the Big South OVC? I'm obviously not now in the middle of the video going to look at the Big South OVC conference to pick my team, but you guys let me know what you guys think about that, and we will move on. Okay, we are now talking about changes in the FCS in 2024 and beyond. So this means conference realignment, teams moving up, coming to the FCS, teams moving down, or I don't think any teams move down, but teams moving up, coming to the FCS, teams moving up, above the FCS, going to the FBS, and, teams moving conferences. So This is an article by Stan Becton on NCAA.com. So if you want to go check it out, go check it out. It's called Making Sense of FCS Conference Realignment. And I'm going to try to make sense of it. I don't think there's much to make sense of. Obviously, one of the biggest things for this is conferences are important at the FCS level because conference winners receive automatic bids to the 24-team FCS playoff. However, for a conference to be eligible for an automatic bid, it needs to have a minimum of 6 eligible teams. The SWAC, MEAC, and Ivy League do not send their conference champions to the FCS playoffs. That's just a little note. But some of the changes. Stephen F. Austin is leaving the WAC or the United Athletic. So why do they... Here's a question I have. Here's a big question I have. Why, if it's the United Athletic Conference, do they still call it the WAC? What is the WAC? The Western Athletic Conference, or what does the WAC stand for? I think it's Western Athletic Conference or whatever. But why is it the UAC, but they still call it the WAC? Either way, Stephen F. Austin is leaving the WAC and is returning to the Southland. So they're potentially a team who could threaten for that Southland Conference championship. Like I just said, Incarnate Word would win. So Stephen F. Austin may have something to say about that. We'll see. But they are leaving the WAC, joining the Southland. I think that goes into effect this year. By July 1st is when they will be officially back in the Southland. So, yeah, interesting for them. Richmond is leaving the CAA, joining the Patriot League. I think they could shake things up in the Patriot League. When does that start? It doesn't say on this article when it starts. I can't remember if Richmond is going to be in the Patriot League starting this year or if that's going to start next year. I think that might actually start this year because they mentioned how Bryant is leaving the Big South and joining the CAA, which gives them 16 teams. But I think with Richmond, the CAA had 16 teams. So that would mean that Richmond must be leaving this year and joining the Patriot League. But that's going to shake things up because I think Richmond could threaten Lafayette for that Patriot League title. We will see how that turns out. But I think that could be a very interesting game right there with Richmond and I think that could be a very interesting turnout for Richmond and Lafayette. I don't know if they play each other. I have to look at their schedules, but that's going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting. Richmond leaving the CAA for the Patriot League. I wonder what sparked that. I wonder what within it probably had to do with money. Everything in college football has to do with money. It probably had to do with money or exposure, type of TV deal, whatever it is. But they're leaving, going to the Patriot League after they just won a CAA title in 2023 as well. Shared the title, obviously, but won it in 2023. Now they're leaving. Sacred Heart leaving the NEC and goes independent. So Sacred Heart left the NEC for the MAAC conference. Since the MAAC doesn't sponsor football, the Pioneers are going independent. So it's probably they left for other sports, and football just got the brunt of the stick. Their football team's not super strong in general. So, no surprise that they didn't really take into account the NEC. I mean, the NEC is not a strong football conference anyway. You're not getting the super exposure, national exposure by playing in the NEC with your football team. So they probably deemed it like we're getting the same exposure being independent as we would be playing in the NEC. I will say with Sacred Heart leaving the NEC, I think this opens their schedule up now that they're independent, so they get to plan out their whole schedule themselves. I would start adding a bunch of MVFC and Big Sky teams to challenge, not only to challenge yourself, but because I don't think you're going to be able to compete right now, but I think it lets you know as coaches and players where you need to be to compete at this FCS level. I think it lets you know where the bar is moving for FCS football. Start scheduling some of those MVFC teams. Start scheduling some of those Big Sky teams. Start scheduling some of those CAA teams. Start scheduling some of the better teams in the FCS subdivision, and this lets you know where you need to be as a team, as a staff, as a university to be able to compete at the highest level of FCS football. So I think that's something that could really benefit Sacred Heart. Independent, start building your schedule out. Think MVFC, think Big Sky, think CAA. They're leaving, going independent. I love it. Merrimack leaves the NEC and goes independent. What? When was... I guess who was the team that just... I can't remember the team that just joined the NEC. Wasn't it Merrimack? Either way, Merrimack's leaving the NEC, goes independent. Merrimack left the NEC for the MAAC conference. Since the MAAC doesn't sponsor football, the Warriors are going independent. Same thing for Merrimack. Any team in the NEC, if you end up going independent, you need to start scheduling CAA, Big Sky, MVFC schools to challenge yourself and to see where you need to get, to see some of the recruits. But also, I guess it comes down to recruiting. Not only can you see where you're at, but it's if we can't recruit any of these guys, it's not going to help us anyway. So I don't know. Go independent. Start building out your schedule. Put some tough games on your schedule. Don't play maybe play one or two NEC teams, but like you probably can't play them unless it's non-conference because they're going to be playing all their conference games against their NEC team. So, I don't know. Merrimack leaving the NEC goes independent. Good for them. Good for them. Next, Robert Morris leaves the Big South, returns to the NEC. I don't know much about Robert Morris, and I don't know a ton about the Big South. I can't even remember who won that conference last year. It's on the tip of my tongue. I want to say UT Martin. Yes, it was UT Martin, but I think they shared it with somebody else. Either way, that Big South OVC conference, they're leaving that. Robert Morris announced on November 8, 2023 that it will return to the NEC, a conference it left in 2019 and 2024 as a football associate member. Robert Morris's departure from the NEC leaves 2 teams left in the Big South. Dang. So the Big South only has 2 teams left. It's not going to be the Big South OVC soon enough. It's going to just be the OVC. I mean, they might as well just name it the OVC. I mean, what is the reason that these teams want to stay in the Big South and not just name themselves OVC? Or what is probably contracts, probably TV deals? Never mind. I get it. Either way, Robert Morris leaving the NEC, leaving the Big South, going to the NEC. I don't know how well Robert Morris competed in the Big South. I think they were one of the worst teams in the Big South. So now they're going to the NEC. Maybe that will, the NEC is probably a worse conference than the Big South OVC. So maybe they're able to compete a little more in the NEC than they were the Big South. Who knows why they left the NEC in the first place, but Robert Morris is going to the NEC. I don't think very highly of that conference. No offense to anybody in that conference. I just don't think very highly of it. We'll see how that turns out for Robert Morris. Western Illinois leaves the MVFC to join the OVC. So they'll be part of that OVC/Big South merger. Western Illinois announced on May 12th, 2023 that it will be leaving the Missouri Valley Football Conference to join the Ohio Valley Conference in 2024. The Leathernecks will join the OVC in all sports outside of football beginning July 2023. So July last year they joined everything else outside of football joined it last year. This year, football will be joining the OVC Big South, with the football program joining the new conference a year later. So this year, Western Illinois, Big South, OVC. I don't think Western Illinois they weren't a very strong MVFC Missouri Valley team. Hopefully, some of the woes that they faced in the MVFC won't be the same they faced in the OVC. Obviously, the Missouri Valley is a better conference than the OVC, Big South Conference. But so hopefully that lends itself to some wins for them. They're not playing against the same level of competition in the Big South OVC, so maybe they're able to compete better. I'll be interested to see how Western Illinois does. But also, it doesn't always have to do with the competition level you're playing against. Sometimes schools just have a winning culture. That's why St. Thomas came from a D3. Now they're at FCS and they're still winning. Even though they didn't make the playoffs last year, 7-1 in their conference in the Pioneer League, that's a winning culture. Tarleton came from, I think, D3 as well, come up to the FCS, competes. I don't know if they've won their conference yet, but they compete. Winning culture. There's a litany. North Dakota State did the same thing. They came from D2 and came to FCS, and it was business as usual because there's a culture about it. Sometimes winning culture wins outside of no matter who you're playing against, who you put in front of us, we win. Like Ferris State, people wanted to count that Ferris State game, and Ferris State didn't end up winning a lot last year. But I think they were multiple-time national champions. Ferris State, I know they're national champions at the D2 level, but I can't remember if they were coming off a back-to-back or what. But Ferris State had won a lot at the D2 level. They come and play Montana. They play them very tight early on in the season when Montana's still trying to figure things out. Montana ends up winning by 7, and people want to hold that against them. But Ferris State has a winning culture. I'm sure Ferris State probably would have beat a lot of FCS teams last year. I know, not pretty sure. I know that Ferris State would have beat a lot of FCS teams last year. So they can hold it over Montana's head all they wanted. But, that was a good outfit, a good D2 squad. Obviously, Montana shouldn't be hanging around with them. But I'm speaking on winning culture. Winning culture is what some of these teams lean on and why some of these teams are so good. That's why having a coach who can develop a winning culture, who can instill winning habits into his players is very, very important at the college level when these kids are young and impressionable. Bryant leaves the Big South, joins the CAA. Bryant announced on August 10th, 2023 that it will be joining the CAA in 2024 season as a football member. This move comes 2 years after Bryant left the NEC to join the Big South as an associate football member. See below. Bryant gives the CAA 16 football teams in 2024. So I wonder why Bryant left the NEC first off, and then what made them join the Big South. It seems that a couple of teams are leaving the Big South. You got Robert Morris, who left the NEC to join the Big South. I think these teams are just kind of floating around. They're trying to figure out what conference is going to fit them best. And they're just trying to figure out what conference fits them best, who's going to give them the most money, who gets them the most exposure. I don't know all the decision making behind some of these moves, but obviously they're trying to figure things out. They're joining the CAA, which is, if you weren't competing in the NEC, which I don't think Bryant was competing in the NEC, I don't think they were competing in the Big South. Now you're going to the CAA, which is a better conference than both of those. And we will see where the chips fall. It all comes down to recruiting. It all comes down to winning culture, like I just said. But we will definitely see how they're able to do in 2024. We'll definitely see how they're able to do in 2024. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about college football, but I'm excited to see how those boys do as well. So, yeah, we'll see. Obviously, you got Murray State, who left OVC, joined the MVFC. I think that goes into effect this year. In 2023, Murray State will join the MVFC after playing one final season in the OVC in 2020. Oh, yeah, so they joined last year. I don't remember how Murray State did last year. I don't think they did too hot in 2023, but they're in the MVFC. Hopefully, they'll have another year under their belt this year. We'll see how they do. North Carolina A&T leaves the Big South, joins the CAA. These are, and we've kind of pivoted. These are changes within the FCS in 2023, so... actually, we could go on forever, so I'm actually not going to read all of those. Either way, you guys let me know what you guys thought about some of these changes that have taken place in the in college football this year, in FCS college football this year. What do you guys think about some of the conference realignment? What do you guys think about some of the teams moving around? You guys let me know what you guys think about that, and we will move on. It was an FCS Fans Nation where I saw this tweet. FCS Fans Nation group where I saw this tweet, and it said most anticipated FCS games of 2024. Most anticipated FCS games of 2024. I suggested a game in there. I said Montana, Western Carolina, but a bunch of people put games in there, and we will be talking about some of the games that people suggested in there. First things first, one of the ones I saw the most, the Brawl of the Wild. Obviously, that's a much anticipated FCS game every year. Next is the marker game against SDSU and North Dakota State. Much anticipated game every year. Those are obvious. Some of the ones that people put in there, South Dakota State versus OK State. I'm very excited to see that one. I wanted to talk about something that I said earlier on in the offseason. I said that Oklahoma State wasn't returning a lot of their pieces. I am absolutely ludicrous. I didn't do a lot of research on Oklahoma State prior to making that statement, and I should have. Oklahoma State is returning a lot of people. Oklahoma State didn't lose virtually anybody. I don't have to go down this for a long time, but I don't see... it's going to be hard for me to see South Dakota State beating Oklahoma State. I'm not going to talk about this at length right now. If you guys want me to cover it deeper, closer to the season, I can, but I don't know if SDSU can beat OK State. I think potentially last year's not even potentially, I think there was a strong chance that last year's South Dakota State team could have beat this year's OK State squad, and maybe even last year's OK State squad, but this year, I don't know. South Dakota State lost a lot. OK State retained a lot. They have probably the best running back in college football. A couple of really good receivers. I think their quarterback returned as well. I think defense for Oklahoma State is going to be hit or miss. So we'll see what they are on the defensive end. But South Dakota State, Oklahoma State, very interesting date right there. Very excited about that date. Next, North Dakota State versus Colorado. That's one I've talked about that a lot. I think the line right now is about 8.5, 9. That's what the spread is. I see North Dakota State being able to cover that. 8.5. I see that, depending on how Colorado is, that'll be a good gauge of how good Colorado is, because North Dakota State is no slouch. They got good players all over the place, good quarterback, good running backs, good safety, top safety in college football, top 5 safety in college football, top 10 safety in college football, and Cole Wisnowski, really good player, really good game. I'm looking forward to one of the most anticipated, probably one of the most anticipated games of the college football season for Colorado and North Dakota State. Really good job, really. I saw Pete Thamel was talking about that game. He was saying that whoever their assistant athletic director is at Colorado should be fired for hiring scheduling North Dakota State, because they're an FBS. They defeat FBS teams like it's regular. They do that a lot. So does South Dakota State. But that is not going to be an easy date. As a team like Colorado, when you're scheduling a North Dakota State, you're hoping, we can beat up on an FCS school, get our guys' legs underneath them, correct the film, because there's going to be a lot of mistakes in a game like that because it's the first game of the season. Nobody's ever perfect. So you're hoping that you can get those wrinkles out against a lackluster FCS opponent. North Dakota State is nowhere near a lackluster FCS opponent. So whoever scheduled them is going to be in a world of hurt if they end up losing that game. They might be losing their job. Who knows? Incarnate Word versus South Dakota State, something I mentioned a little earlier in this video. That's a really exciting game that I'm very interested in. South Dakota State, obviously back-to-back national champion. Incarnate Word, I think, could be a good team in 2024. I think this South Dakota State game will really tell us how good they're going to be, in 2024. So really good date right there. Montana versus Eastern Washington. Montana going back to the red turf after a couple years off of it. Montana's never won on the red turf. I think if any year Montana could steal a win on the red turf, it would be this year. Montana's got all the pieces. Eastern Washington has had a couple of down years. Obviously, they don't have a quarterback at the level of Eric Berrier. Kakoa Vispres is a very good player. Eric Berrier was just a difference maker. They got Efton Chisholm. But, what does Eastern Washington look like on the red turf in 2024? Had a couple of down years. We will see. I think Montana has a chance to be able to get their first win on the red turf this year. Will it be? I don't know. That turf is not the greatest. They don't have a lot of... the turf is not great. Turf is not great. I'm going to just say that. Either way, Montana versus Eastern Washington, one of the most anticipated dates in FCS football. University of North Dakota versus Montana. University of North Dakota versus Montana. I really like that game. That is in North Dakota for Montana. Last time we went to North Dakota, we got beat down badly, really badly. We were down by 20 in the first quarter. Next thing we know, just nothing was going right early in that game. Fumbled a kickoff, fumbled on the 1 yard line. We got a strip fumble from one of their corners, stripping one of our receivers. Just bad things happened in that game all over the place. So, University of North Dakota, Montana, really exciting date. Playoff team last year. Obviously, Montana was a playoff team last year, so really good competition early on in the season. Furman versus Western Carolina. Furman, really good team in the SoCon. Western Carolina was a decent team in the SoCon last year, kind of fell off late in the season. I don't know if that's a rivalry game, but I think they're both Carolina teams, so I gotta guess they're both purple too, which is interesting. I gotta guess that's probably a rivalry of some sorts with Furman and Western Carolina. I don't know much about SoCon and the rivalries, but I gotta guess they have to have some sort of animosity between each other. So really exciting date there for Furman and Western Carolina. I'm really excited to see that game. Idaho versus Montana. Obviously, I don't even know who put Idaho and Montana on here, because Idaho and Montana don't play in 2024. I didn't even think about that when I made this list. Somebody was probably just wishful thinking Idaho and Montana. They do not play in 2024, so I'm going to move past that one. North Dakota State and East Tennessee State. I don't know why that is a very anticipated game. I think East Tennessee State plays in the OVC Big South Conference, that merged conference. I don't know. We'll see how good East Tennessee State is in 2024. I don't know how good they were in 2023. They were not a playoff team. I don't know. We'll see. North Dakota State, Eastern Tennessee. That's one of the games that I saw on there. FAMU and Jackson State was one of the games that I saw on there. Pretty exciting date right there for FAMU and Jackson State. I know Jackson State is a pretty good squad in that SWAC conference. FAMU obviously won the SWAC last year, went to the Celebration Bowl, I believe, won that Celebration Bowl against Howard. So they're feeling on top of the world. They've been doing all the winning. They had one of the best defenses in college football, in FCS football last year. So FAMU, Jackson State. Delaware versus Villanova. This is significant because this will be Delaware's final game as an FCS team. They are moving up to the conference, I think Conference USA, in the FBS. So Delaware's final game will be versus Villanova. That'll be an exciting game for reasons as I just said. Eastern Kentucky versus Central Arkansas. I think that might be a rivalry. I believe both of those teams play. Central Arkansas. Who is Central Arkansas? UAC is the Central Arkansas is in the UAC. Eastern Kentucky, I believe, is in that UAC as well. They might be Eastern Kentucky might be in that Southland. I think they're in the UAC either way, though. That was my stomach if you heard that. Eastern Kentucky versus Central Arkansas, a very exciting game. And then Sac State versus UC Davis, a rivalry game. I can't remember what the name of that rivalry is. Somebody had put it on the Facebook page. I probably should have put it on there. But Sac State, UC Davis, that'll probably have some Big Sky ramifications within it, depending on where those schools are at the time in the Big Sky. That has some ramifications with it. So Sac State versus UC Davis, big-time game that people will be paying attention to, as well as myself. Okay, you guys let me know what you guys think about some of those games. One more game I wanted to mention, Montana versus Western Carolina. I said I would mention it, but I didn't see it. I didn't put it down here. So Montana versus Western Carolina is another game that I'm excited to see. I think that is actually the game that I had listed on there. Funny enough, I didn't even put my own one on there. But Montana, Western Carolina, very excited to see how they do. You guys let me know if there's any other games that you guys are anticipating in 2024. What are you guys excited to see? Who are you guys excited to see face each other? I know we got the Big Sky, Missouri Valley matchup, so everybody loves to see what the record was between those games. But you guys leave some comments down below of what you guys think is your most anticipated game of 2024, and I will move on. Okay, who is playing week 0? This is our final topic of the day. Who will be playing week 0? Not a lot of games in week 0 with FCS versus FCS opponents. This is from Sam Herder. He listed some of the games that of the teams that'll be playing in week 0, and I'm going to tell you guys some of them. Norfolk State versus Florida A&M. Florida A&M, we just spoke about them in our last segment. They won the SWAC in 2023. They won the Celebration Bowl, being the HBCU national champion in 2023. Norfolk State, that game's going to be played in Atlanta, Georgia, week 0. Probably a big date for HBCU football in terms of revenue, in terms of TV, in terms of exposure. Big time. Hope they have a big weekend for them. And then you got North Alabama versus SEMO in Montgomery, Alabama. Really big date for them too. SEMO was not a playoff team in 2023. They had a draft pick, actually. I think he went maybe in the 6th or 7th round. Might have went in the 5th round, but they had a receiver get drafted this past year. I'm blanking on his name right now. But North Alabama, SEMO in Montgomery, Alabama. McNeese at Tarleton State. Now, that is a game I'm excited to see. In that Southland Conference, I know McNeese is in that Southland Conference. Tarleton State, I believe, is a UAC, United Athletic Conference team. They might be a Southland team, but I believe Tarleton plays in the United Athletic Conference. Either way, McNeese at Tarleton. There's one reason only why I'm excited about that that McNeese date in week 0. Clifton McDowell. Man left Montana, went to Temple. Now he's back at the FCS at McNeese. I'm very excited to see how he plays against Tarleton in 2024. How will he play? Will he be the starter? I mean, I don't even know how things are going. I don't know what kind of quarterbacks they had. Obviously, they probably brought him in because they expect him to start. But how will he play in 2024? How will he start the season off? Everybody, that is going to have a lot of eyes on it. That game is going to have a lot of eyes on it solely for Clifton McDowell to see how he plays. So I know a lot of Montana fans are interested. I know a lot of FCS fans in general will be interested to see how he plays. So we'll see how that turns out in 2024. FCS versus FBS opponents in week 0. Montana State at New Mexico. Really exciting date. I think Montana State could really easily win that game. I'm not going to say easily. It's an FBS opponent, so obviously they got more resources, probably better recruits a little bit. Who knows? But I think Montana State could probably handily win that game by a touchdown or 2, maybe even 3. We'll see. I don't know anything about New Mexico, so we'll see about that. And then you got Delaware State and HBCU at Hawaii. I don't know much about Delaware State. I don't know much about Hawaii this year either, but I know those are going to be some exciting games. Are any of these games particularly exciting for you guys? Is that McNeese at Tarleton game exciting for you guys? You guys let me know in the comments, and we will move on. Okay. Thank you guys so much for tapping in today. That will conclude my Tuesday video. I appreciate you guys so much. Big Sky Media Day is in a couple of weeks. I should be attending Big Sky Media Day if nothing changes. I don't want to, I should be attending Big Sky Media Day. It should be a good time. You guys can catch me out there if you guys are out there in Spokane. It'll be a good time. Going to be interviewing some of the players, going to be getting some content with some of the players. It'll be a great time to be out there and be present. I want to thank you guys for tapping in. I want to thank you guys for viewing my channel. I want to thank you guys for continuing to support me. Make sure you guys leave a like. Make sure you guys leave a comment. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel. Subscribe. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will catch you guys next week. Thanks.